All right, so we are going to talk about complex numbers, which we have already seen complex numbers when we're solving quadratic equations. So for example, when we get something like this, -2 plus 3i, that is an example of a complex number. Or if we have 4 plus I, that is an example of a complex number. And in general, all complex numbers look like this: a plus bi, where a is a real number and bi is the imaginary number. And we are going to talk about how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide these complex numbers. So, example 1, add or subtract. -2 plus 4i plus 3 minus 11i. And literally, this is just like combining like terms. So you are going to add the real numbers together and you are going to add the imaginary numbers together. So I would do -2 plus 3, which gives me 1, and 4i plus -11i gives me -7i. And that is literally it. That's all you got to do. Let's try another one. 4 minus I minus 5 plus 8i. So we've seen this before. When you are subtracting something, that subtraction applies to both things, or however many things are in that following parentheses. So I need to do 4 minus 5, which is -1. And then I need to do -1i minus 8i. So that would give me -9i. All right. 6 minus 2i plus -6 plus 2i. And 10 plus 3i minus 10 minus 4i. I would like you to try these on your own. So please pause the video and take a couple minutes. Try these problems on your own. When you think you have the answers, come back and see how you did. Okay, so for C, this actually just equals 0 because 6 and -6 cancels out. -2i plus 2i, also we get to 0. For D, you just get 7i. 10 minus 10, 0 again. 3 minus -4 really means I'm going to do 3 plus 4, so we have 7i. All right, let's do some multiplication. Now, here's what you need to know about multiplying imaginary numbers. I squared will come up because I squared means we do I times I. And remember, I is the square root of 1. Or I'm sorry, square root of -1. And if I square the square root of -1, we get -1. So the key that you need to remember is that I squared equals -1. And that's something that you will need to memorize and know as we are doing this multiplication. It will make sense once we start doing some examples here. So let's say I have 2i times 3 minus 5i. Okay, so just like if this were an x or something, I'm going to distribute the 2i. So 2i times 3 is 6i. 2i times minus 5i, well, 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 10. I times I gives me I squared. And we just were saying I squared equals negative 1. So we have 6i minus 10 times negative 1, which is 6i plus 10. Now, the last thing that I would recommend is that you write it in the proper order of the real number first, then the imaginary number. So our answer is 10 plus 6i. All right. Let's try this one here. 5 minus 6i times 4 minus 3i. So this is where we will use FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. So 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times negative 3, negative 15i. Inside, negative 6i times 4, minus 24i. Last, negative 6 times negative 3 is a positive 18. I times I is I squared. I squared is really negative 1, and I can combine these like terms. So I'm going to do a couple things. Those together give me negative 39i plus, I'm going to replace I squared with negative 1. That means I have minus 18, and then I can do that subtraction. So I have 2 minus 39i. Okay. Let's do one more multiplication. This is another example where we would need to FOIL. So first, 7 times 7, 49. Outer, 7 times negative 2i minus 14i. Inner, plus 14i. Last, negative 2i times 2i gives me minus 4i squared. I can combine like terms, and when I do, those are going to cancel out, make 0. I'm also going to turn this into negative 1. So I have 49 minus 4 times negative 1. Because remember, these canceled out. That becomes 49 plus 4, which is 53. Now, isn't that kind of odd that we multiplied two complex numbers together and we ended up with just a real number? Nothing imaginary about it. There's no i's left in this number. And that is because the two numbers we multiplied together have a special relationship. These are called conjugates. And this is another word that you will need to know. The conjugate of a plus bi is a minus bi, and vice versa. So you can see these two complex numbers are identical, except for the fact that one has a plus and the other has a minus. So those are conjugates of one another. And this is going to come up because it's going to help us with the division. Okay? And what happens is whenever you multiply conjugates together, things tend to simplify. Okay? So when multiplying conjugates, the expression simplifies. And what you will find is that anytime you multiply two complex conjugates together, the answer will always be a real number. Always be a real number, which is very helpful. So, example 3, dividing. So let's say I have 5 plus I over 2 minus 4I. So step 1 is to multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. Multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. So I look at my denominator. It's 2 minus 4I. So in this case, the conjugate would be where we have a plus in the middle. And that's the only thing we're going to change. 2 plus 4I. And of course, I need to multiply the same thing to the top and the bottom of the fraction. Okay? Step 2 is to FOIL. So, first is 10. 5 times 2 is 10. Outer, 5 times 4i, 20i. I times 2, 2i. I times 4i, 4i squared. Okay, that was the top. I got to do the bottom also. 2 times 2, 4. 2 times 4i, 8i. Negative 4i times 2, minus 8i. Do you see what's going to happen here? Negative 4i times 4i gives me minus 16i squared, because we have I times I. Okay, now we combine like terms. And remember that I squared equals negative 1. So I'm going to combine any like terms that I have and change any I squared to negative 1. So on the top, I can do 20i plus 2i. So I still have 10, 22i. And then here, I have 4 times negative 1 instead of 4i squared. On the bottom, 8i minus 8i cancels out. So I only have 4 minus 16 times negative 1. And then really it's just kind of combining like terms again. So this gives me 10 plus 22i minus 4 over 4 plus 16. Negative times a negative. Almost there. 6 plus 22i over 20. And the last thing is that all of these are divisible by 2. So we get 3 plus 11i over 10. And that would be our final simplified answer. Fun times. All right, that is it for Chapter 5. We will definitely practice all of this stuff and make sure you're ready to go for the test on Thursday or Friday, depending on what cohort you are. We'll see you soon.